Thank you so much, Lihua. Thank you so much. I'm very pleased and happy to be here again in Changsha and to be with you. And I want to bring to your attention some ideas about narration, the importance of narration in our life, in our daily lives. And I'm very happy to be here with you and discussing these elements of our daily life. Today is May 8, and in Europe, this is the end of the Second World War, of the liberation of Germany by Allied troops from France, from Great Britain, from Russia, and from the United States. So this is a very special day to begin this kind of this kind of reflection about narration, because of course narration is very important in our times, and it has always been very important in relation to wars. So, for example, in 842, pretty close to the Black Forest, what today is France, in Strasbourg, there were the so-called Sermons of Strasbourg in 842. And it's on a linguistic level, it's the beginning of French literature. It's the beginning of French literature. On a German view, linguistic view, it's the beginning of Althochdeutsch. So it's the German language. It's the start of the German language. What happened in that town, which is the town of the streets, Strasbourg? And so they avoided war. The children of Charlemagne, they were divided. There were 3 children, 3 sons, and they divided their huge empire Charlemagne had conquered, and they had to divide it. But one of them was going into war in order to kick out his brothers. And so at a given moment, when it seemed that the whole empire would crash, because subdivided into different parts, and each part fighting against another one, they had a brilliant idea. And the brilliant idea was to find a way to peace. And what was this way to peace? It was just inventing a language for swearing peace. And this language was narration, and the trick was the troops had to swear it in the language of the other. So the so-called French troops, or French-speaking troops, they had to swear in German, in Althochdeutsch, in Old German. And the Germans, they had to swear in French. And the formula they invented in both sides, was literature. It was a narration, how they would stick together and not going against the war. And it was extremely useful, because by this swear, it's called the Serment de Strasbourg, or in German it's the Straßburger Eide. So in both languages you have still that memory of the 9th century, 842, swearing in the language of the other in order to establish a connection between both parts that were about to fight in a war. So this was very wise, and sometimes I would love to see these kinds of tricks of diplomatic inventions nowadays, because sometimes, you know, we could say that humankind is developing extremely, very quick on a technological level, but is developing very slowly on a moral or ethical level. We didn't learn so much since these times. We didn't learn so much, but we learned a lot of technological implementations. But still, we are on a moral level, on an ethical level, we are underdeveloped, so to speak. And we can learn from past, so 9th century, more than 1,000 years ago, they were very wise in order to implement narration and narration in the language of the other in order to avoid war. So this is today on the day of liberation against National Socialism. National Socialism is, can you hear me? National Socialism. Thank you. The day of liberation and fighting for a new world at that moment in 1945. It's a crucial moment. I've just finished a novel about this moment in 1945. And so you can see at that moment how the hopes of the people were fueling new ideas of narrating the world, of how we can understand the world in different ways by narrating the world, but just seeing how narration is inbuilt in our daily life. So, of course, narration is always a fundamental dimension of how we can live together. It's not discourse. I will come back to these concepts. It's not discursive structures, antagonic structures, oppositions between different concepts that are creating people. It's narration. Narration means that you are moving, that you are always on the move and see things from different points of view, and so allowing to reflect on the oppositions that are still there, but that can be overcome by just implementing them into a narration. And this is what this seminar is all about. In which sense we can make sense out of narration, and how narration can help us. We will see that literature is the main key to understand these structures, and that narration is something inbuilt in the human mind. So we always tell stories, but how do we tell stories? When did we start to tell stories? So it's very difficult to say, but the first monument of a narration and a complex narrative text is the Gilgamesh epics, 2,200 before our era, in the Mesopotamian region, so between Euphrates and Tigris, the two rivers in Mesopotamia. And this is the first literary text we know in the history of the humankind. So 2,200 before our era. And the strange thing is that it's extremely developed. It's a very complex text. How is it possible we're able to develop complex ideas in a complex narrative structure. How is this possible? So there must be something before the Gilgamesh epics. So you have, I will come back to this a little bit later, you have different origins of different kinds of writing. So you have in the Mesopotamian area, 3200 before our era, the first kinds of writing. You have around 1600 years later in China, the first writing. And we will see the differences between these different kinds of writing. But narration, of course, was long before, existed long before writing. So please try to concentrate on the temporal structure. So 3,200 for more or less the birth of the first writing systems we know. 3,200. 1,000 years later, more or less, the first literary text we know until now in the history of humankind. But now, let's go back to these paintings. Go back to these paintings and to a world where these paintings are painted in caves. In caves, and we could say the oldest paintings were created about 45,000 years ago. 45,000 years ago. So it's much before, long before the first literary texts. And we do not know so much about how narration was created, but we know about these paintings. These painting in Lascaux, the famous caves of Lascaux in France, about 17,000 years. You have always indication. I indicated the age of these paintings always. We will go through different. Ah, yeah, I remember. And this is something that is absolutely amazing. You have different kinds of paintings all over the globe. You can find these paintings in caves in Australia. You can find these paintings in caves in France, in Europe. You can find these paintings in China. You can find these paintings in Indonesia, the oldest one, 45,000 years ago in Indonesia. You can find these paintings in what today is Latin America. You can find these paintings in Africa. And they are very similar. They have always some characteristics that distinguish these different paintings, but you can very easily see that the idea of the painting is always the same. So imagine human groups sitting in caves illuminated by fires. And they are painters. They have forms of music. They have different forms of art, artistic dimensions. And then they tell stories. We don't know the stories exactly that they were narrating. But these stories are still ongoing. It's something perhaps a little bit difficult to understand at first glance, but literature is conserving by transforming. Literature goes on for thousands of years, first in an oral context, then in a literary context, and we are still the heirs of the literature created 4,000, 5,000 years ago, right? So if we say 2,100, 2,200 for the Gilgamesh epics, it's about 4.5 millenniums ago that we have written texts. But how do we come from painting to a written text? It's a long time. If you imagine 45,000 years ago, or in this case in Lascaux, around 17,000 years ago. What do we see? We see bison, we see our ox, we see horses, we see different kinds of animals. So the women and men living in the caves in that moment, or coming back in the evening to the caves, they design the scenes of their lives outside of the caves, right? And they tried to bring it in. And we do not know if or to what purpose they did. It can be for religious reasons. It can be for narrative reasons. It can be, of course, for artistic reasons. The human mind is an artistic mind. You can design everything you see, everything you hear, everything you smell. So everything that is in your senses in a artistic mode and transform it into music, into dance, into narration, into literature. You can transform it into paintings. So all these different forms are there. And if you, but you can even conceive a world where all these animals are present. Where all these animals are present. We know, of course, in China, it's as well very present. We have animals as narrators. We have stories of fairy tales where animals speak. Don't misunderstand animals. They are watching us very closely. We are living together with animals, and animals know more about us than we know about animals. That's for sure. And so this can be objects, or it could be even speakers of a vision of human mind. You can see different animals in this case. We can imagine narrations between these animals. We can see how something develops and brings to our consciousness animals speaking to each other. We can see hunting scenes, so men hunting animals, but we can see also the strength and the power of animals in these paintings. Huh? No. Well, technology is there always in order to fail. So you can see very different. Now I will show you different designs, different animals coming from different places. So again, this is another cave in France, and you can see, of course, I mean, these are thousands and thousands of years ago, and you can still see how beautiful the design is, how beautifully designed it is. part of a generation who was able to see these things in the originals. I went to the caves of Lascaux and I saw the designs, and it was absolutely amazing in these caves to see these designs thousands and thousands of years later. Today you cannot go to Lascaux anymore because, of course, when you breathe, it's destroying the design. So, for example, in Altamira, in Spain, where you have a beautiful series of caves, they closed the caves and they recreated the same caves in an artificial way, so people can go there and see and have an idea of what these caves were. But still in that wonderful position, and I had even I was working as a tourist guide for specialized tourists in the Cape Lascaux, and it was absolutely amazing to see these animals. They are like, imagine flickering lights, and then you see these animals move with the light, that is thrown on these bodies. Okay, so you have human bodies as well. Women that are represented here in another cave in Chauvet, so about 30,000 years ago. 30,000 years ago. That's quite a lot. And they are still there. And of course, a female body is represented very often in a fertile way. So it represents fertility. It represents not only the woman, but the fertility of humankind. And so the representation of female bodies is very specific. You have the kind of different social roles in that society. You could say that, of course, there were gender roles already existing. The men hunting and the women bringing to birth the future of this group. But here you have this wonderful here you have this wonderful body designed in a cave with these forms that give body to that women, 1,000 years. And of course, of course, you can see here. This is again Rouffignac, another cave in France, in southwest France, where you can see different kinds of animals, very clearly designed, even so long time ago. And you can see these animals that in part do not exist anymore in Europe, but other animals like horses that still exist there. So it's very interesting to see as well. These documents in a way that tell us about the population of animals in that field. But you can imagine at the same time humans sitting there in the caves and trying to give voice to these animals, narrating stories how they hunted the animals, narrating stories between these animals. This is how oral narration started. So how can we understand these structures? And what is the importance of these structures? Imagine a world outside the caves where human life is always in danger. They were struggling to survive. And struggling for survival means that their lives were in danger, and so once in a safe place, inside the cave, inside a given room, This is the room for telling stories. And telling stories gives life to a community. It creates a community. It's not only about words, it's about narration. Narration means the creation of a community, of a human body built by different individuals. And this is the way how these worlds, inner worlds, were created. So, of course, it's a kind of survival as well. When you have these bodies of animals and you are telling the stories, the first thing that it means is that you did survive, and so you can tell a story. So let's take, for example, the Chinese writer Mo Yan. So he can tell us stories about, for example, the Second World War that finished not only on May 8, but later. And he told stories because he was able to survive, right? He lived a little bit later. He was born a little bit later after the Second World War. But if you want to tell a story, the first thing you have to do, and we will see that in the seminar, is you have to survive. So the fundamental sign of humans in order to build a community is to signal, I'm still alive. And this is the function of narration. When you're dead, you cannot tell us any story. You're not able to tell a story. But when you're alive, you can tell other people, I'm still alive, we are still in a group, we can do something together. And so relation, this is about Homi Bhabha, this relation between nation and narration is extremely intense. There's a whole theory about the relation between narration and nation. But I will not come to this today. Later on, I will go there. But I will try to figure out in which sense these animals play a major role in the history of human beings and in the history of narration. So this is the story of the cave of Altamira, I've already mentioned. The cave of Altamira in northern Spain. It's a very beautiful cave that was discovered very lately by a small girl. And she went there with her father, and then all of a sudden they went into a cave, and all of a sudden she exclaimed, "Toros pintados." So, animals, painted animals, toros pintados. And this is one of these toros pintados. Bison, it's not a toro. And but you can see in the multichromal way of designing that there is an artistic desire. And so you can imagine long before the Gilgamesh epics and the world making related to the Gilgamesh epics, you can understand that the complexity of narration in these caves. So we do not know exactly which was the purpose, the central purpose of these narrations, of these oral narrations. But what we know is that there was narration, that there was not only worshipping, not only addresses to the gods, but as well the creation of an inner world. The creation of an inner world inside the caves. And please take this as something related to yourself. The creation of an inner world is extremely important in our lives, in our daily lives. Whatever may happen to you, the creation of an inner world is central for your own identity. It's central for your own survival, for your own consciousness. And the survivors of the war, of the Second World War, they were insisting a lot on this dimension. Everything was taken away from them. Their houses destroyed. Everything they possessed disappeared. But the inner world they had created was still with them. So you are sitting here in this room in order to learn things and to remember things, but at the same time you build an inner world. And this inner world is perhaps the most important gift of education, because it allows you to survive in very different conditions. So don't forget that the inner world of the inner cave is in a way representing the inner world of your lives, the inner world of your artistic design inside yourself. Very often you will see that you are telling stories, that you are telling yourself stories. You're alone, you're walking on a way and walking to the city, or you're at home or whatever, and you all of a sudden you get aware of the fact that you are telling a story to yourself. Or you listen to stories. You listen to stories about the history of China, for example. This is a story, it's a narration. We will see a little bit later how these stories are organized. But they are still related to the stories that were told inside the caves. Because then the human mind learned how to organize a story, how to organize a relation between the inner world of the cave and the outside of the cave. In which sense these worlds were related. There is a relation between the world of the cave and outside. Outside and the cave is not the same thing, but it's not completely separated. You can bring in the outside into the inner world. You bring it in, transform it, you have to transform it. And there's something that is very important. You can see, well, remember these forms of the rocks. You can see that this kind of transformation is not only about the three dimensions of the room. It's also about time, history. The humans that painted these parts are not living anymore. But the art they created and the expression of their mind and their ideas, they are still there. They are not eternal, but they are there forever. There's a difference between eternity and the Chinese concept of longevity, of Changsha, and the concept of eternity, and the concept of a way to survive. These are three different concepts, and it's still there. These paintings, even if you don't know these paintings, are still there. And here you can see something. This is a cave in India. This is now very, I'm really, for me it's a little bit a thrill to talk to you about these paintings. Why? Because I feel that you as Chinese students have a special gift to understand that this, you can see the design of the hunting scenes and animals and humans and so forth, you can see that. This is pretty close to writing. This is pretty close to writing. You know that when you write Chinese characters, you are painting. When you are a student in Europe, born in Europe, you're not aware of that fact. A pictographic dimension is not in the alphabet, but in the Chinese signs, in the Chinese characters. You have zhen. You have people walking, so to speak. And you can see that in these signs, in these designs, in these paintings. So shift from painting into writing is not, there's not nothing like an opposition. It's an ongoing process. And you can see that even today, as a beautiful book on L'Empire des Signes by Roland Barthes, by the French theorist Roland Barthes. His book on Japan is dissolving the categoric difference between writing and painting. Because painting, writing, and for Chinese is pretty normal, I would say. Writing and painting is a continuous, it's a continuity, and it's not a categoric difference. In a European mind, it's a categoric difference, because writing and painting has nothing to do, at first glance at least. But for Chinese, you can see how from a painting, things are going into a writing. Now, when you have a look at the European languages, when you tell a story, everything is related, or there are many, many relations between counting and telling. So, for example, you can say in French, how would you say in French for a story? Un conte. Un conte. Un conte, that means it's something, a number, that is how do you say this in English? It's counted, you know, like a countdown. It's counted. Le conte. In English, it's a count. In German, it's erzählt, eine Erzählung, ein Conte. Why is this? Why is there a relation between telling a story and counting? It's so strange. It's not as strange as it may seem at first glance. I was so happy, again, and this is something that has deeply influenced me. I had, a couple of years ago, I had a stone in my hand with the first writings in the Mesopotamic area. And it was about, you see the number 3 in Chinese. What is the number 3 in Chinese? Not in Arabic signs, it's j, right? It's pretty familiar to you. And this is exactly how, in many, many cultures, different writings started. So I had a stone with 4 ch. And these were 400 sheep that were going with somebody from one place to another. And in order that this person could not start with 400 sheep and arrive with only 200 and 200 in his own property, you see? So they gave him a stone. And in this stone, on this stone, there was a kind of writing, 4 times 100 sheep. And he was going from a deeper place nearby the river of Euphrates, nearby the city of Uruk, where the Gilgamesh epic is made, to a place in summer times in the mountains. And this is the start of writing. Writing is something about control. Writing is something about remembering. Writing is something about memory as well. And of course, every writing from the very start is accounting. Is counting something that is given to you and that you can give to others. So this is the relation, the deep relation between an account, an Erzählung, il conto, il cuento. In all the European languages, you have this. You have this deep relation between. And so here you can see in this example from India that this relationship is very close to writing. This is a place in China. So I wanted to bring to your attention as well an example from China. It doesn't really matter who was the first. I started with Lascaux, so 17,000 years ago, and then you had Chauvet 30,000 years ago, and this is a little bit closer to us, but you can see the signs, yes? And you can see the scenes, and you can see how the design goes into something that a little bit later would be a writing. And as far as I know, Chinese writing is the oldest writing system still in our times, still used today. It's the oldest writing. It's not the oldest writing in the world. There are many systems that come before the Chinese writing system, but it's the oldest writing still in practice. Okay, and so I think you can easily detect elements that are the in-betweens of writing and designing. And here, it's much later, you have, it's still in China, you have pretty developed designs of figures that are pretty much closer to a painting. We could even say a painting by children, for example, would be a little bit like this. But here you can see a very differentiated, and it's about narration. It's about different figures. It's about different points of view. It's not only object. See these figures that are telling stories to you. One figure, or a horse, a human, or whatsoever. They open different perspectives. They open different perspectives of narration. And imagine you can easily develop different ways of narration from that painting. Yeah? It's very easy to imagine something that comes out of this painting. I mean, I could oblige you now to take 5 minutes and to invent a story based upon this design. It would be very interesting to see your stories, the stories you will tell us. But here you can see very easily, and this is why I chose this painting, these Chinese paintings, or let's say this painting found in China. It's not a Chinese painting in the true sense. It's a painting found in the cave in China. Now here is again from India, another example. But I will show you more. Okay, this is something I can not show you. This is from Indonesia. There are copyright problems, so but I just wanted to mention that. It's pretty close to what we have seen already. It's pretty close, and it's 45,000 years ago. Imagine, 45,000 years ago. And there was already an inner world that human beings have been painting, have been developing, in an inner world inside the caves, bringing it to and related with the outer world. Here, this is a very beautiful element coming from Argentina, is the human hand in an inverse dimension, in an inverse representation. This is something, the hand, the human hand, so the instrument of painting, of designing, of writing, that is represented in these narrations, in these pictures. And what is astonishing is you can find these hands in Argentina, like in this case, or you can find it in Indonesia, you can find it in China, you can find it in Europe. It's very interesting. When you are writing right now with a pencil or on the computer. What is the difference? What is the difference in this kind of media? When you are writing with your hand, with a pencil, your body is there. It's a handwriting. Nobody will ever be in a position to have exactly the same handwriting as you have. It's a bodily expression. It's a bodily expression that goes away when you, but with the introduction of the printing press, let's say around 1500. The printing press and the human development is starting to avoid, to get out of the body, the human body, out of the writing. This is a technological process that ends with the computer. On a typewriter, there is still something of your body on that kind of writing. It's inbuilt. So you had at the start of the 20th century, you had specialists that could recognize a given human being typewriting, because some humans is on the letter E and others on the T and so forth. So it's different kind of pressure on the keys, right? On a computer, you can press as if you want it, but the result will always be the same. You can press hard in a hard way or not. The result will always be a given letter, right? And here you have this expression of the hand, of kind of hand painting. The expression, the bodily expression of the painter, the bodily expression of the artist as a creator of an interior world. So it's absolutely amazing to see that on continent in this world, on this planet, you find this kind of hand present. Isn't that beautiful? I feel that in the presentation of the artist, this is a very important part of the story. The storytelling and the artist, the creator of the inner world, is present in various forms, in very different forms. But here you can see it in a seemingly innocent and naive way. The presence of a hand that is always extremely individual. So this is in Colombia, not in the southern part of Latin America, what today is Latin America, but in the northern part of the subcontinent. And you can see pretty close as well the relation to writing, to write in lines, and to different forms of writing. You may know that human beings have decided upon the direction of the writing, from left to right, or from right to left, or from up to down, or down up, or like on the countryside when you go cultivating a field in this way. There are cultures that present this way of writing. And here you can easily see that the narration of scenes is following a certain structure. And this is what I will come a little bit later to. This seminar is called Order and Progress. It's perhaps you know that this is the slogan of Brazil in the flag. Have order and progress, and so it's an ironic idea of narration. But here, order and progress is that it means that we have a more and more defined structure of narrating in a given order. This is what is behind the idea I want to present to you. This is a very old cat coming from Africa. So Africa as well, from Namibia, southwest Africa, is a very beautiful design. That's 30,000 years ago, and it's still there. And these animals are present in very different forms. Here in Thailand, and you can see the hands again, the hands of artists, and you can see in a way as well these hands as a sign of the presence of human beings and of the focus of narration. So I will skip this. This is now Australia, where the gods, all the ghosts, are represented. We know that because the oral traditions of the Aborigines in Australia, they still tell stories that are thousands and thousands of years old. So orality is not just disappearing. It can be translated into time. So if you transform your oral tradition and you give it to the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation, then you can conserve. So time is a very important dimension of narration, and I will come back to that point today. And here you have horses and human beings, and yeah. And this is the point I wanted to come to. This is Northern Africa, a painting where you have a very differentiated painting. It may look like something that has inspired the surrealistic painting in the 1920s or 1930s, right? So you can see very tiny persons, human figures. You can think that this is about dancing, this is about bodily expression. It's very old, and it's still there. You could easily sell this as a surrealistic painting if you just take the same shapes, and so you can imagine very easily stories that are told from one perspective or another perspective, and so forth. So stories, narrations that build the insight and the deep feelings of a group, of a community. And this is the thing, this is the main point I want to develop. So how do we tell stories? We tell stories orally. We tell stories all day long. And not all these stories, all of our stories, will be kept and will be conserved. They will go away. Some of the stories are kept in writing. And so narration in a literary dimension is something that can last for a very long time. You have the Gilgamesh epics, 2,200 before our era, so more than 4,000 years ago. And you don't know anything else about the empires, the names of the emperors, the political system, and so forth. You can only know something about these elements by reading stories. Stories where these elements are present, the emperors, the name of the emperors. What is not in a story and not in a literary story will disappear. But what is in a writing, in a literary story, will be there for at least a very long time. So there is such a very fragile thing as literature. It is much more fragile than any political system, any social system, any economic system. They fade away, but literature still remains. The writings in narration are still there. It's very probable that within years, if the planet is still turning around, we can read the stories of Muyen. That's pretty probable. We perhaps do not remember the names of the governors and of the tycoons of our time. We will not remember them, but we will remember the stories that are told at this moment. So, for example, of Chinese history, of the Japanese in China, of the wars, or about birth control in a novel like The Frogs by Muyen. So this is something that is still there, and the narration is something based upon a given story. Now, what we call a story is a series of elements. But how do we tell the story? We are plotting. Have you heard about the difference between story and plot? Yeah? No?